The class of 2025 is building and the borders are secure. Minnesota keeps the number one kid in the state. We're diving in today.
You are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota
Whatever
Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. And today we're diving in on some Gophers football. We're going to talk about what we noticed in the spring practice availability on the 11th. We're also going to dive in and talk about two new commits for the Golden Gophers class of 2025, including the number one kid in the state of Minnesota. And then finally, we're going to talk about these injuries, because could Minnesota already be feeling the hampering of injuries? Could they already be playing a major factor into 2024? We'll dive into all of that today. So be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube so you don't miss any of your Gophers goodness when it comes to the daily content of your Minnesota Golden Gophers. Now, in the offseason, we tend to slow down just a little bit as we get towards May and what have you. So we might start getting towards 3 episodes a week instead of about 5. But it's been up and down for me here with the growing family and whatnot. I appreciate your patience and you tapping in each and every day that we do drop an episode, and we're going to try and get it going for the rest of this April month. Now, let's talk about what happened in Gophers spring practice this week that was open to the public and media. Now, overall thoughts from this spring practice, if I'm being 100% transparent, fully honest, and not pulling any punches, I would say that this offense is far from ready to do anything productive in the Big Ten. I feel like there's a lot of things that need to happen and need to get right, but luckily we are still in the April month of the year, so that means we've got not only April, May, June, July, and heading into August, 5 full months before we actually hit the regular season. That's a lot of time to get things together, and it all starts with how you can go into the offseason, put it together, do the unrequired work, and really do everything and then some to help bring yourself and the chemistry of this team to the next level. So they have a lot of time to really get it together, especially the quarterbacks and wide receivers, or quarterbacks and pass catchers. So I think overall this offense is really far from ready right now, but it has a lot of time to get ready. Now, that being said, the defense looks really promising, but I do question, is that because the offense looks so poor, or is it because the defense looks just that good and is really playing that fast? Because that is what has been a priority with new defensive coordinator, Coach Heatherman, is playing faster, playing with more instinctiveness and not thinking so much. And that was what he came in here with, a very similar system, but stripping away some of the elements of things so that the players are playing faster and creating more chaos. So hopefully that is more of what he is asking for that's coming to fruition. And that's why the defense looks so darn good, as opposed to the offense having such big struggles. So hopefully that is really just tipping your hat to the defense and how quickly they are coming together, because the defense does look faster with the more simplified elements that Coach Heatherman has been prioritizing. And hopefully we continue to see that more and more as we continue to move forward, and especially into the fall camp. Now, this team is nowhere near ready to play a real game, but luckily they don't have to for quite some time still. Now, other things I've noticed, injuries are absolutely hampering this team, and we're going to dive into those a bit more to close out today's show. But one thing I will say is this running back room is extremely promising. I feel like there are 4 running backs that can really be an every down type of guy if needed. And Darius Taylor obviously heading that room up with the highest upside, and seeing him be a vocal leader in that running back room is very nice to see. I think there's nowhere to go but up, and he already has shown that his floor is really high and his ceiling is, we don't even know what his ceiling could be. He could be an absolute stud, one of the best, if not the best running back in the country as things come together. So I'm really intrigued by that. But Coach Fleck had talked about he's not afraid to give his RBs 30 plus touches, 40 touches if necessary. And a lot of fans were kind of put off by that. A lot of fans were kind of like, whoa, 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 that's how we got the injuries. That's how we run the wheels off these guys. We got to be able to, supplement a little bit more. We have to be able to rotate a little bit better. And Coach Fleck said he will not pull the punches. If one guy is really going off, he is not afraid to ride the hot hand. But what I did like to see is that Coach Fleck was using his running backs in a limited usage at times and protecting the RBs in the practice. So you don't need to have Darius Taylor take all the ones carries in the somewhat live practice scrimmages. You can have C.A. Bangura step up and do it. You can have Jordan Newman step up and do it and allow Darius Taylor to stay more fresh as he continues to work through the spring camp. Now, of course, he's going to have many opportunities where he does get those more live type looks, but you don't need to submit him to that every single time you do that type of period. And I think the Gophers were slowly getting these guys implemented and worked in, and there were other times where it was more just wrap up and it wasn't full on like contact where maybe he'd plug in and play there. So overall, I think that Coach Fleck is doing a good job of protecting the RBs so far. That being said, 2 RBs, both of the true freshmen coming in that early enrolled, are both injured right now. So that's a tough blow for the Gophers' depth long term. But the 2 transfers that came in give them some wiggle room overall. Now, you saw a number of drops in this open practice, especially from the pass catchers. Elijah Spencer had a tough day in this practice, but again, it is just practice, so it's not something that you should freak out or panic about at this given point in time. Now, when we're looking at players that maybe Gophers fans or the average Gopher fan from last year doesn't know much about, they didn't get much opportunity, they're a younger guy waiting in the wings and whatnot, I have 8 players that are making a case for position battles that you should put on your radar to know as we head into the fall. The first one, Phillip Daniels. Phillip Daniels is a right tackle. He comes from last year's class of 2023, and you know what? He has been impressing this coaching staff with his ability, with his work ethic, and how he is really getting involved into things. And so they have been working him into some 6-man offensive line lineups. I saw multiple times where they brought 6 offensive linemen to certain sets that they were calling, and Phillip Daniels was always that guy coming in. On top of that, there were moments where he was rotating in with the ones, in rotating with Martez Lewis at that right tackle position. So right now you've got Quinn Carroll kind of cemented in that right guard position so far through the spring. Greg Johnson has been at the center for most of the spring. And then Tyler Cooper and Ariante Ursery at the left guard and left tackle positions. Then you have the right tackle, which seems like it could be a battle heading into the fall potentially between Martez Lewis and Phillip Daniels, who is a younger player and could be a future of the position moving forward. So it'd be really interesting to see him battle it out, maybe get some run and opportunities in this 2024 season. Now, another name that will be one to make a case in the position battles is a guy I have been touting on the show: left, right, sideways, up, down, diagonally, you name it. Zaquan Bryant. He is standing out. Coach Nick Monroe had talked about him in the pressers recently. Justin Wally had talked about how he's playing faster. He's playing natural. He's playing instinctively. And he talked about how you like to see a younger guy. You know, he played well in the bowl game, and then all of a sudden you see him continue to run with it. He's been impressing his teammates. He is a guy that definitely can push for some time. Between Justin Wally, Ethan Robinson, and Zaquan Bryant, I think those are your first 3 cornerbacks on this Minnesota defense. So overall, definitely a name to know if you don't already. But if you listen to the show, I know you already know the name because I will say it again. That's my guy. I think he's going to be a stud here for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Now, a wide receiver, we haven't mentioned too much on the program. We've mentioned him here and there, but I've talked to you about Kendrick Lanier. I've talked to you about TJ McWilliams at times. But a name you got to know, and I mentioned it here and there, but he is standing out for this Gophers team, is Nuke Hayes. He had a really good scrimmage last Saturday, according to the coaching staff. He popped off in this practice itself, and he's really having the opportunity to step up due to injuries. Daniel Jackson's not out there. Christian Driver's not out there. Jalen Varner's not out there. So somebody has to step up, and Nuke Hayes has done that and then some, and he's gaining trust and he's gaining confidence. But he is mentioned by every single person in the presser after: Coach Fleck, Max Brosmer, Justin Wally, you name it. Nuke Hayes is a name that has really been impressing his teammates, so it's a name you're going to want to keep in mind, especially being a redshirt freshman receiver who is just getting going with the program. Another receiver I think to keep an eye on, Christian Hoskins, but mainly as a returner right now. Now, he has the speed. He has the difference-making ability. I have been begging this Gophers team for 2 years to get him worked into the returning game. Maybe they will. It looks like he's getting some opportunities here in practice, and he looks nice. He looks speedy. He looks quick. He looks decisive. I love what I see from him, and if they can get him on the field in that capacity, I think he can be an impact player. And then a couple more names. Tyler Stolsky laid the smackdown on somebody today. He is going to work in that linebackers rotation. He might not be a starter, but he'll find some valuable opportunities and snaps this season. Definitely a name you're going to want to know. Garrison Monroe. That is a name in that safeties room. I feel like we saw more of Garrison Monroe in this last practice than Kerry Brown. And we also saw Garrison Monroe a little bit in the first practice that was available. So it's definitely a name that could work into the rotation, kind of like how Aiden Gooseby worked in last year and would sub in or come into the nickel package apparently or occasionally. I think Garrison Monroe could be playing his way into that type of opportunity right now. And then the final two names I have for you to keep in mind, Matthew Kingsbury. He's been working at the Sam linebacker position, comes from the same high school that PJ Fleck went to, if I recall, and he's very versatile across the linebacker room. I think this Gopher staff really likes him, and I think they're going to find ways to get him some snaps throughout 2024, even if he's not a starter. But my number one sleeper name that has been popping out to me in this spring is Pierce Walsh. Pierce Walsh is a tight end, if you did not know, and this dude just radiates success on the field. He may end up behind Jameson Gears, behind Nathan Jones on the depth chart, potentially, but this dude will, and you can mark my words right here, in April of 2024, this dude will be a starter for the Gophers at some point. The separation in his route running, he looks bigger and stronger, soft hands. He has made plays in both practices. He's gotten some reps with the ones and looked good in them. And as a redshirt freshman, I think he is the future in this tight end room. I would not rule him out in eventually starting even this season. I think Pierce Walsh is a name you're going to want to know. Now, finally, to wrap up these spring notes, top 3 observations for your boy, Kane Rob. First, Philip Daniel could absolutely battle Martez Lewis for the right tackle position. Second, Drake Lindsey shows a lot of flash for the future. He has touch throws, anticipation, measured risk-taking, and he still shows some of his youth and still putting things together, but he shows promise, and that's fun for the future. And then finally, Lemeki Brockington could be a major factor in Minnesota's pass game. If anyone has looked like a starter in this past game, it is Brockington. Now, Daniel Jackson has been out for these spring sessions, but he is making similar type growth that we saw Daniel Jackson make last spring. We're seeing some of that with Brockington this spring. He's dependable, and I look forward to covering him this season. Those are my observations for the spring. A little bit longer of a segment, but we're going to dive into 2 new 2025 commits, including the number 1 kid in the state. What do we have coming to the Gophers in 2025? We're jumping in coming up next. First, I got to talk to you about our friends over at eBay Motors, because passion, drive, and patience is the formula to winning championships, and then it's also what helps keep your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, they've got you covered over at eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts, look, it's the spot to be if you need anything when it comes to your vehicle, and you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. But the best part of it all is that the eBay Motors has the eBay Guaranteed Fit, which means your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. So with all the parts you need at the prices you want, definitely head on over to ebaymotors.com to keep your ride or die alive. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and the eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit is for U.S. customers only. All right, Gophers fans, let's dive into 2 new commits for the 2025 class. The class is starting to build up. Officially has 5 commits in the class, but the Gophers pull in the number 1 kid in the state of Minnesota. He is staying home. The borders are secure. Major get for Minnesota, and you have a linebacker in Emmanuel Karmo. Now, he also said that he grew up saying he would play for Minnesota one day. But when you look at his top 7 that he listed on Twitter, you're talking about Oregon, Wisconsin, Penn State, Nebraska, Ohio State, and USC along with Minnesota. You look at that list and you're like, you're getting a little nervous. We've seen this time and time again. The top kid is like, look, I see LSU, I see Ohio State, I see Michigan. And all of a sudden you're getting a little nervous and you're like, man, they're probably not going to stay home. They got big offers out with some of these blue bloods. Maybe they see these guys playing in the college football playoffs. And rather than building that opportunity here at home, you see those guys run to those opportunities. And I don't blame them, especially if they come with a bag of NIL attached to it. But Emmanuel Karmo says, you know what? I'm staying home. I want to be here. He also pulled in offers from Kansas and Missouri recently. So he is really gaining a lot of traction in that 2025 recruiting period. And he has officially shut it down and committed to Minnesota. Now, that being said, these other schools are going to keep pursuing. These other schools are going to get aggressive, and hopefully Minnesota can keep him on hand like they did with Coy Parrish. Now, he could play the rush end position or the will linebacker. Super versatile, super high upside athlete, and he's a guy who could play really young. He could play right away as a true freshman or maybe as a redshirt freshman. Either way, he's a guy that can make an impact for this Gophers team. He really connected with Coach Winston De La Tibadier. No surprise there. Coach Winston is the man, and look, I have heard nothing but positive things about him from his players and recruits alike. Now, in his junior season, Karmo had 48 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks with an interception taken back to the house for a touchdown, as well as a fumble recovery for a touchdown. He also had played on the offensive side of the ball as a receiver, 15 receptions, 294 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So the dude's an athlete. The dude scores. He finds a way for the ball, a natural knack for it all. Plays at Cooper with Will Howard as the coach, Willie Howard, I should say, head coach over there. That's Jackson Howard's father. Both of them have played together. Jackson Howard was the former number 1 kid in the state of Minnesota for the class of 2023. Now, Jackson Howard went over to LSU, but he is officially in the transfer portal. So could this possibly be a very small drawing factor to bring back the 2023 number 1 kid in Minnesota to pair with the 2025 number 1 kid in Minnesota? It'd be fun. They came from the same high school. They can come do it in college. They come ball out, come grow for the NFL. That is what you want to see when you talk about the borders being secure. So that would be an awesome way. But regardless, those two could play in a pass rush tandem. But overall, it's just talking about Emmanuel Karmo, super exciting player to add to this class, and you now officially have 5 players heading into 2025. Now, the other commit that committed in this past week was Cross Nimmo of Ohio. He's a tight end prospect for Minnesota. Another big dude, 6'6", 225 pounds as a junior in high school. Other major offers he had were Rutgers, Illinois, Louisville, and he could play a similar role to what we saw Brevin Spanford play with the Golden Gophers after he develops down the line, after he gets stronger, after he learns more of the blocking concepts and what is needed here at Minnesota. He could play that similar type role, has a similar type build. But overall, last year as a junior, he had 30 receptions for 801 yards and 15 touchdowns. And he also played defensive end and had 4 sacks. So those 2 players add to Minnesota's 2025 class. They add to defensive lineman Torrin Petaway of Wisconsin, who decommitted from Wisconsin and came over to the good old Golden Gophers. On top of that, you got cornerback Zachary Harden from Georgia, who committed, and then quarterback Jackson Collick, who is from California, very, very close to being a 4-star guy. Same with Emmanuel Karmo, also on the edge of being a 4-star guy across the services. So definitely some talented quality gets for Minnesota in this class of 2025. Super early stages in this recruiting period, but Minnesota is very particular so far in their additions in this class, and I believe this class is looking promising to say the least. I think both 24 and 23 have high upside, and this class of 2025 looks to be in a very similar vein, which gives you a lot of hope and confidence on how this Gophers team can develop moving forward. So definitely exciting times. We'll keep you covered here as we learn about more commits to the class of 25 here at Locked On Golden Gophers. But the final thing I want to talk about on today's show is the injuries, and they're becoming very prominent with the Gophers. Is it something to worry about? We're going to dive into that coming up next. First, let's talk about that number one ticketing app in America, in my humble opinion, and that is none other than Gametime. And Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which also means getting tickets even faster and easier on that side of things. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down as it gets closer to the first pitch, and Gametime is the spot to be. Here's why. You have last minute killer deals on tickets. You have all in prices that you can toggle and no longer have to deal about or worry about those fees that come in at the end. On top of that, you have views from your seat so you know what you're getting into, and their lowest price guarantee. So they are doing everything they can to make sure you are comfortable with your tickets and not stressed out about the events, but looking forward to the great time that you will have. So definitely check out their last minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, you name it. They've got deals from flash deals, zone deals, and then the all-in pricing, which is my favorite. So you don't have to worry about any random fees coming up at the end. You get your total up front, and they have the lowest price guarantee where Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if their price isn't the lowest. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets and go download Gametime today. Create an account and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON college for $20 off. Terms apply. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Gopher Sense, is it time to start worrying? Because there are injuries happening to this football team already, and we're only in the spring. I'm talking about looking across the field on this practice. I was taking note of the injured players, and you have injured players who aren't practicing at any capacity besides rehab and stretching with the strength and conditioning team. And then you have non-contact injuries where you have a specific colored jersey on, a orange colored jersey, in order for players to know not to make contact with you. Those are the two type of groupings you have. Now, on the injury side of things, players who were not playing in any capacity at this practice, you had Nick Callerup, you had Fame Ijiboy, you had Jaden Wright, you had Devin Williams, you had Rowan Zolman, you had Joey Gerlach, you had Giante McMillan, you had Daniel Jackson, Christian Driver, Jalen Varner, and Sam Macy. That's a lot of players not taking any sort of capacity of snaps, but only rehabbing because of injuries. That's a ton, especially, and there's some heavily impactful players in that grouping. So it's a little bit worrisome. And then you talk about the non-contact injuries. So these guys might work in some of the team periods. They might work in some of the different live type period, the live type periods where it's almost like tackling, but not quite. You're not going to see these guys in non-contact jerseys on the field. But that being said, you've got Darius Green, who was a starter last year, Jack Henderson, who was a starter at the nickel last year, Jamison Gears, who is supposedly your starting tight end moving into the year. You've got Darnell Jeffries, who was a defensive tackle. Justin Wally, who is your starting cornerback. And then you've also got Theron Randall, who is a defensive tackle, one of your depth players, younger players who could work into the rotation. That's a lot of guys with non-contact as well. So that is what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 non-contact. And I could be missing a name or two. And then on top of that, you've got 3, 6, 9, 12 or 11 players on that injured list that were not practicing in any capacity. So yes, it might be positive because it opens up other opportunities for some of the younger guys to get on the field and get the reps with the ones and get a look at them and see how they're growing and could they step up into important roles in this upcoming season. But also, you have a new quarterback. You have a new defensive coordinator. You would love to see your impact players generating more chemistry with your new quarterback and the timing and how things need to be run in this offense. On top of that, you would love for your new defensive coordinator to be able to see firsthand what some of these starters bring to the field in his new tweaked offense, his different flavors of the same system of the defense is what I mean. I think I said offense just a second ago, but you only can see so much on the sidelines. You only can mentally take in and mentally take reps so much, but you have to get on the field and experience it. So definitely a needed chemistry build for not only the quarterbacks with their pass catchers, wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, what have you, but also with the defensive coordinator and getting a feel for how he likes to do things. So overall, it is a little bit worrisome for the Gophers. Definitely something to keep an eye on. but would the low reps for the 3 to 4 pass catchers, would it make PJ Fleck consider maybe going to the portal for another wide receiver option? I wouldn't rule it out. I think the big key factor there is Kenrick Lanier and Nuke Hayes. Did they show enough for you to feel comfortable if Daniel Jackson or Elijah Spencer or Lemeki Brockington goes down to injury and those are your next guys up? Are you comfortable enough with that? That's a major question. We're going to get that answer when the portal opens up, because if they go really aggressive after some receivers, then they're maybe not quite comfortable yet. But if they don't and they sit tight and they're like, look, we like these young guys and what they showed us in the spring, then that speaks a lot to them being the future of this program at the receiver position. So definitely something to keep in mind. But when you're talking about those injuries, you have Callerup, who was a part-time starter last year, Devin Williams, who was a starter on defense, Daniel Jackson, who was an impact all-conference starter for the Gophers on offense, Jack Henderson, who was a big-time starter on the defense, Justin Wally, who was a starter on the defense, Darius Green, who was a starter, Jamison Gears is the anticipated starter at tight end. That is 7 key players from last year that have missed a lot of time, if not all of the time this spring. That is a little worrisome, and it's definitely hampering the chemistry of this Gophers team. Now, on top of that, you've got Giante McMillan, who was huge in that first practice. He was flying around the field. You could see he brings an extra spark to this defense. He was in a sling and off to the side rehabbing. You had Christian Driver, who is a young higher upside wide receiver who we haven't seen play in any capacity quite yet, coming from Penn State. You've got Jalen Varner, who is a high productive D2 wide receiver who got injured, and we haven't really been able to see much outside of that first practice. All these players were added from the portal that could carve out a role, but we haven't been able to see them too much because of injuries. So definitely a little bit worrisome, but not anything to hit the panic button quite yet. But if Minnesota keeps falling into these injuries, it could be a rough season for 2024. That being said, there's a lot of time between now and the actual start to the season, and a lot of those names I listed could be healthy in time. So it's not time to panic, but definitely something to keep an eye on as we head towards the season. That's going to do it for us here at Locked On Golden Gophers. Tomorrow we're talking men's hoops. We're talking about Cam Christie, who's headed to the NBA draft to test out the waters, but he could still come back. We'll dive into what that all means on top of Parker Fox heading back, and 2 names that are visiting the Gophers either now or in the near future, and we'll talk to you about them then, all on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Golden Gophers. I'll see you then. Roll the boat, Scotty Mott, go Gophers, and as always, please do not forget to hit subscribe.